welcome back to the Wholesome Financials Podcast. My name is Austin.
Susie.
And we're starting a new series talking about how to get business funding from banks that pull from Experian. And we're going to go over the major 4 banks to start. And if there's other institutions that we're leaving out, like, feel free to let us know. But we're going to go over Chase, Amex, Wells Fargo, and then we're also going to mix it up and throw in PNC Bank. Which one are we talking about today?
Let's go with Chase.
Chase. Okay. So, and if you don't know, we love 0% interest credit cards. And so we work with business owners, teach them how to get funding, alternative lines of funding, different from traditional lending. And so what we're going to go over are a lot of data points and teaching you how to get funding specifically from banks that pull from Experian. So where do you want to start today?
Let's start with Chase. Let's talk about the different data points, like what kind of credit scores they need.
Okay.
What type of cards do they have? What are the names of the cards? And
Yes.
then we'll dive deeper into the nitty gritty of opening the bank account and all that.
All right. So these are these data points. These are exactly what we fund. This is exactly the data points that we advise our clients on that have helped them secure consistently $75,000 limits just on one card for 0% interest for 12 to 18 months that you can roll over to another card, essentially securing yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding for your business.
Yeah.
And so we're going to dive into it because Chase is one of the hard ones, right? Chase is not easy.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, Chase primarily wants to see credit scores of 720 and above. Okay.
Yeah.
And now let's break down what a 720 score
entails. Like, how do you get a 720 score?
Exactly. Because you can have a 720, but have like a very thin credit profile.
Oh, okay. There's different. Okay. I see what you're saying.
It's like the strength, right?
Yes. The strength of your 720.
So you can have one authorized user trade line and that's it, and still have a 720.
Yes.
So what we're talking about is having a 720 and above, and 720 honestly is like the bare minimum, right?
Yes.
And so what we want to see is, revolving credit. How many credit cards do we have?
Yep.
How many, do you have an auto loan? Mm-hmm. Do you have a mortgage? Do you have past loans that you've paid off? Have you paid off a couple cars in the past? Is your credit really, really strong? That's Chase's primary thing that they want to see, not just a credit score, but credit report in thickness.
Yeah, Chase is, because there's a lot of different institutions that you can go to and people talk about and tell you and say like, hey, you can get funding here if you have low credit, And there's a lot of those places out there if you're in that situation. But if you want the big limits, the banks have the biggest limits, the biggest banks, because they have the most money. And so the criteria is definitely a little bit harder to get in. So that makes sense because, there's a lot of ways you can have a high credit score, but your credit profile can be extremely thin, not having a lot of credit cards, like certain things that Chase needs to see, certain identifiers to make sure that you're a suitable candidate for a high limit, right? You can get approved, right, with the 720, but it doesn't mean you're going to get a high limit. And so let's be clear, the strategy we're talking about is how to get a high limit credit card, because a lot of you guys are stuck at the 20,000 limit.
Yeah,
level.
So high limit, we mean like 50K, 60, 75K. If you have a very strong profile, I've seen upwards of like 100K in just one credit card. So it's definitely possible. We just got to make sure, the credit profile is very thick when it comes to applying with Chase.
Yeah, it's got to be thick like a bowl of oatmeal, okay? Mm-hmm. So the idea is you want to make sure that, you have some history. Like you say, you have some things that are paid off. You have some cards on there, a couple cards. Like, you've shown that you can handle some type of credit limit. They're not going to give you 75K if you only had 1,000 this whole time. You got a great credit score only having 1,000
that you opened like
available
6
credit.
Months ago.
Exactly. It can't be young either. It's got to be there for a little while. So those are some things to pay attention to. If you want a list of that, I'm pretty sure we could probably put that.
Yeah,
somewhere.
We'll probably put this doc in the, like an accessible document for people, like a rubric almost, so that you guys can see what Chase actually is looking for. But another thing that obviously the series talking about Experian, one thing with Chase though, is that if you're on the East Coast, like if you're in Florida, if you're in, Illinois, Chicago area, they will double pull. Yes. Meaning they'll pull your Experian and then they'll also pull your TransUnion. I don't know why they do this, but they do. All right. Yeah. So if you're on the West Coast, like if you're in California, Texas, they'll only pull Experian. So FYI, if you're on the East Coast, make sure that your TransUnion and your Experian are clean as far as no lates, no late payments, no charge-offs, nothing like that, because they will do that.
So is it a possibility that they can get a foreign entity, like establish a type of address and use a Chase Bank on the West Coast?
Technically, yes. Okay. Like if you have an LLC that, let's say you live in Florida.
Yep.
But then you foreign entity, the LLC in California, you can apply with the California one and then essentially only have that Experian being pulled, as opposed to applying with one that's from Florida and then having that double pull TransUnion and Experian.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, well, that's great to know. So some other things that Chase is really serious about is negatives. You can't have any negative items on your credit report.
Yeah. And so negatives, primarily, we're talking about collections, late payments, charge-offs, too many inquiries. Now, if you have a late payment, like let's say you have a late payment from like 6-8 years ago, I've personally seen that you can still get funded, but the late payment has to be old. I'm talking about
like past a bankruptcy.
Yeah, like 7, 8, 10 years. They're able to bypass and look over that. But the relationship has to be strong, meaning like you've had a bank account with them for a while. You've had a good seasoned account, meaning you've had 5,000, 10, 15, 20, 30K in there. They want to see that relationship before they lend out that money, because you still have that little blemish, even though it's been 7, 8 years.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. I think we're going to talk through some of those things too. Seasoning the bank account, things like that. So shameless plug, if you do have collections, late payments, charge-offs, and you need to repair your credit so that you can go into these banks and get high limit 0% interest business cards, especially if you're in fix and flip, real estate, Airbnb, or trucking, or whatever the case may be. We work with a lot of clients. We have a free DIY credit software that we've just rolled out for our clients. You'll probably see it on the screen, links in the bio. Feel free to check that out. The only thing you have to pay for is to keep your credit report active and updated, which I think is like $30 a month. But the service itself, the software itself, is completely free. So shameless plug. But we also have like a done for you type credit repair service, and there's some great people out there that do it too. Like I know Mike the Credit Guy's got Dispute Bees, things like that. But if you want to do it yourself and save yourself some money, we highly recommend you use our software. So anyway, shameless plug. All right. So speaking of things on your credit report, let's talk about hard inquiries. Yeah. What's acceptable when it comes to that? Like, can I go get a car before I go try to get funding for Chase? Like,
it depends. So Chase all banks are inquiry sensitive, some more than others. But a good rule of thumb when it comes to business funding in general, most banks do not want to see more than 3 hard inquiries in the last 3 to 6 months.
Interesting. Okay.
So within 6 months, you should not have more than 3 inquiries. Gotcha. And if you do, then we need to work on removing them, right?
Yes.
Like, let's say you've applied to another business card in the past, they pulled your Experian, that inquiry's on there. We can remove that. Inquiries are a lot easier to take away than collections and late payments, right?
Yeah.
So the good rule of thumb, any bank, okay, is 3 hard inquiries in the last 3 to 6 months. If you want to be like real good, you don't want to have any.
Yes.
You know? But if you have like 10, 20, 15 from, going to buy a car at the car dealership, we might need to work on that. Okay. Yeah. So, we do have a expedited hard inquiry removal kit that we give to our clients if they sign up with our program, so that they can learn how to remove these inquiries. And Experian by far is the easiest to remove. You literally can call them, and within 24 hours, they'll have them taken off.
Nice. Yeah, we should probably do a video. Have we done something like that before?
We haven't, but we will. That's in the pipeline. How to get these, especially Experian. It's probably the easiest to remove.
Okay. All right. That's good. So you want to make sure you don't have more than 3 hard inquiries in the last 6 months if you're going to go to Chase for funding, trying to get these high limit 0% interest credit cards. Also, something else you got to pay attention to. May not have heard of this, but Chase has this thing called the 524 rule, which means you cannot own or have open open more than 5 cards anywhere within the last 2 years or 24 months. Not just with them, just period. You cannot open more than 5 cards in the last 24 months. And so, but primarily it's personal cards with other banks, because business cards don't show on your credit profile.
Exactly. So to add a little bit more to that, only credit cards count. So like, let's say you got a car within the last year, that car does not count into that 524 rule, only credit cards. So let's say you went to 5 different banks, or you have 3 Amex and then 2 Capital Ones, and you got them all last year, you're at the 524 rule already. Which means that if you apply to any Chase credit card, you're probably going to get denied. And you can have the most perfect credit score, 800, beautiful profile, but you are going to probably get denied unless, this is the only time I've seen it, unless they send you a special offer to your house. Like, you get a paper mail and it says, hey, apply now, and you have a code designated for you. Unless you get that, or you get a special email invitation, you're most likely going to get denied.
That makes sense. And if they give you that special mail, it's probably because you're pre-qualified anyway. So it's like, it's a shoe-in.
It's a shoe-in. So that's the only time I've seen it work, whether it be getting another business card or getting another personal card. But if you're at that 524, I would suggest not applying because you're going to waste a hard inquiry.
Yeah. Now, there is one little workaround, right?
Exactly. So another workaround would be to apply with a relationship manager.
Nice. And so for the people that don't know, what's a relationship manager?
Yeah. A relationship manager is basically a manager that's high up in the rank as far as Chase goes. So they're pretty close to the underwriter. Most of these guys don't work inside the office. They're primarily working from home. So it's kind of hard to build that relationship with them unless you've established that from the beginning, or you've got a connection and whatnot. But if you apply with them, let's say you have 6 credit cards in the last year, you're obviously over that 524. But if you apply with him, you'll get approved.
Yeah.
Obviously, your credit has to be in good standing, but that 524 does not apply if you apply with that RM. So that's why it's so key, especially when getting business funding, to make sure you have someone that you can apply with, or get with a program like ours where we can connect you to someone like that, because you're going to bypass that. Yeah,
we already have those relationships. And the reason we're telling you this is because nine times out of 10, people watch these videos, they get all the data points. They go, okay, I need a 720 credit score. I need a thick credit profile like a bowl of oatmeal. And we're going to dive deeper into that, right? I need to make sure that I got no negatives, no collections, no charge-offs. I need to make sure that I have no 3 hard inquiries, no hard inquiries in the last 6 months. But then they'll go apply online. And then you wonder why you get denied, because you're subject to the algorithm. You need to get in the hands of people, because people can get around and maneuver and put it places that, if you just apply with Gen Pop, like the majority of them, you're going to fall within the cracks. And so this is why having a relationship manager is so valuable. And so we have built relationships with a lot of major banks for this reason. And so by the time we hand you over to our relationship manager, the funding process is seamless. And that's how we can guarantee those 75,000 limits.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. All right. So diving a little bit deeper into the 720 credit score, this is something, an extra data point that helps you know and see what's really attractive to Chase regarding your profile, which is the revolving personal credit limits, right?
Yeah.
And so the best way to describe it is you want to make sure you have about $15,000 in available limits. And so what does that mean? If I have 3 credit cards with $5,000 each, that means I have 15 total available $1,000 that I can use. And so that's a good number, because if you have anything lower than that, then that looks a little shady. But you also don't want to have too much available personal credit, right?
Yeah.
I think at one point we've gotten approved for hundreds of thousands of available credit. But we had to turn it down a little bit. We had to give some of it away so we can get some more.
Yeah. So $15K is like bare minimum, right? And honestly, like this is coming straight from our RM. Like, hey, like this is
these data points are coming from our Chase.
Yeah, like this is what I'm looking for before we say yes to a 7,500K credit card, right? And so 15K is like bare minimum, guys, right? Like if you've had established credit for a long time, getting a 5K credit card, that's like super easy. Obviously, like if you're just starting off, like yes, getting 5K is like awesome, right? But then there's also this concept of having too much available credit, and you kind of touched upon that, where essentially if you have over like 80K of available credit limit, now you're looking a little bit more, you have too much. Why does the bank want to give you more when you're not even using what you already have? You know what I mean? It's just like, why? Like,
because
what are you doing?
They might not make a profit off of you, right? Like they're hoping that you're going to use this card, and they're hoping you're not going to default on it, but they're hoping they're going to make some money off of interest, because most people are negligent. But if you have a lot of available credit, they're like, well, why we're going to give you a big limit if you still got all that over there? How are you going to use the funds we're going to give you? We could probably give this limit to somebody else that's probably going to use it and make money on it.
Exactly. So I know that, YouTube, the internet is always talking about big limits, and you apply for this bank so you could get this. But if you're over that 80K mark, like you actually don't want any more limits. So true story. We bank with LAPD Credit Union, and they gave us like 50K on a credit card, which honestly, to like YouTube, that sounds amazing, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, I want a 50K card. But to us, that would put us way over like the 100K mark of available credit. So we actually told them like, hey, can you slash that to like 10K? And they were like, are you serious? And I'm like, yes. So like once you start having like really good credit and, credit that's been there for a long time, cutting credit limits is not a far-fetched idea. Like most YouTubers say, like, hey, you got to get these big limits. And apart from that, you also want to make sure your utilization is below the 30%, which is huge with Chase.
Yeah. So before we dive into utilization, so just a good reminder, like, when you're thinking about all of your credit limits, which means the limits and the available credit on all your cards combined, at the very least you want to have 15,000, but I wouldn't have more than probably 60. I feel like 30, 40, 50,000.
That's a good range.
Is a good range. You want to make sure you have that, because then when you go to Chase, they're going to be like, okay, you've been in the big leagues for a while. Like, all right, let's give you some limit. Now, utilization. Talk about that. So let's take those 3 cards, for example, right? I have 3 cards, 5K. Let's say I have 1 card and I've used about 70% of it, but the other cards I've only used 10%. So the utilization on these 2 cards, almost broke my elbow. The utilization on these 2 cards are about 10%, but this 3rd card, the utilization is about 75%. Will that fly? Will Chase let that ride?
No. Yeah. So let's break down a misconception.
But I mean, on average,
right? Yeah,
that's below.
So one would think there's a lot of misconception out there in relations to utilization. So let's break it down. So there's utilization, like you said, overall, right? So all 3 credit cards together might combine to just 30% or just a little bit above the 30%, which doesn't sound too bad. But here's what the bank wants to see is each credit card under 30% as well.
Yes. It's
because
not the average of all the cards. Each card's individual.
Exactly. So what you want to do is have 30% and below each card. Now, 30% is like bare minimum. If you want like the best results, we always tell our clients 10% or below is where you want to be. That's that sweet spot. And if you're not there, that's okay. We can work around it, get a personal loan, drop the utilization down. Like there's work around the utilization.
Yes. And that's another important thing. Like you don't have to pay everything down before you go get funding, but it's best because, you only have a certain available cash on hand. In majority of our clients, what slows them down the most is lowering the utilization, because it's got to be super low before we go to a bank like Chase. Most banks, honestly, but especially Chase, because it will impact your approval or how much you get approved for.
Absolutely. Utilization is by far the most important thing. And like you said, it takes our clients sometimes the longest, because that's the only thing we can't do for you.
Yes.
Like we can't pay your credit card.
There's no hack for that.
We can add authorized users to your account at a little more age, but like as far as paying your bill, like we can't do that.
Yeah. Or like we said with the personal loan, we just put that debt outside of the eyes of Chase somewhere else while you go get this funding and then double back.
Yeah.
So that's good. Another thing, if you're trying to get approved for Chase for a high limit business credit card, 0%, you want to make sure that you season your bank account. So you need to open up a business checking account, right?
Yeah. So it's highly recommended to open up a business checking account.
Not personal, business checking account.
Yeah. Now, if you want to add personal, I highly recommend it. We love just Chase in general with all their products, personal cards, business cards. So the more the better, honestly. But yes, open up a business account as soon as possible. Even like if you're in credit repair right now and you might not be able to apply, open that up. Start that. Chase is super relationship based. And so what you want to do is season the account. What does season mean? Seasoning means just adding money to the account.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we always tell our clients 5K and above.
Yeah.
If you have more to add, the better. Banks love for you to have money in the account.
Yes.
Right? So if you got 50K laying around under your mattress, put it all in Chase. Just let it sit.
50K under the mattress. Oh, what are you doing?
Let me
you
know.
Out there trapping in them streets. No, but seriously, you want to make sure, and why this is important is because it shows that you have skin in the game, right? Number one. Number two, and well, let me back up. So it shows you have skin in the game, and what I mean by that is if you have that money in Chase's possession, banks make money off taking your money and putting it in the stock market or putting it in other investments, tax liens, whatever, and then they make that money back. And so one, they'll be happy to see like, oh, we already made some money off this dude. Great, because that money sits there. So that's what I mean by skin in the game. Number two, it shows that you're not strapped for cash if you can let 20K sit there for a couple months.
Exactly.
Or a couple weeks. So that right there is huge. So the more money you have, the better, because it shows your viability and it shows your credibility that I can, no pun intended, credibility. It shows that you right there have the ability to hold the limit and you're not super strapped for cash. So pretty much repeat myself. But that's the point. I just want to make sure I really drive that home. The psychology of that is huge.
Yeah. And to kind of add to that, as far as 2024, I think a lot of banks would let fly you just having the money sit there. But I think we're seeing a lot of changes in 2025 in the sense that they want to start seeing transactions or movement in the account too. So not just letting the money sit, but periodically maybe, withdrawing a 2K or maybe, adding another 3K in 2 weeks. Like we have to show movement. Use the account like your primary business account. Like don't just like let it sit.
Yeah,
make some transactions because honestly, things are getting a little tighter for, funding wise. And that's one of the things that across the board we've seen banks kind of look into. So make sure you're definitely doing that.
That makes sense. So you want to also add movement to the account. That makes perfect sense. Another thing is when you go in for funding for business credit card, right? You apply with your LLC. You want to make sure that you don't have a high risk industry. You can have a great credit profile, seasoned account, have money there, things like that. But you come in and you tell them, I need this money for trucking. Like if they see that, they're gonna gladly truck you outside, walk you back to your truck, right?
Yeah, truck you outside. That's funny. And the reason behind that is because all banks, not just Chase, they have a scoring system and they'll place an LLC in a high risk category and then neutral and then a low risk. Okay. And so obviously if you're in the high risk category, they don't want to lend to you, right? Because they're afraid you're not going to pay them back. And those high risk industries are the ones that take a lot of money to run, right?
Yeah.
Like trucking. Yes, you can have great profits in trucking, but if your truck breaks down, you got to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Your tires, you got to replace 18 tires. We're talking about a lot of money. And that to the bank seems risky. So you want to go with an LLC that's in the consulting space, that's in marketing, that's in IT, somewhere that the overhead isn't all that much because they feel comfortable lending to you because they think, oh, you know what? These people have money to pay me back.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so we've done videos about this. If you check our podcast, like we've talked about low risk snakes codes in industries. We have a ton of videos on how to structure your LLC. If you need help with that, just reach out to us. But that's super, super huge. Making sure you're using low risk codes like consulting and marketing and things like that.
Absolutely.
So we're not going to expound on that too much because we talked about that in the past, but if you need help setting up your LLC to look attractive to banks like Chase, then reach out to us or watch some of our old podcast episodes from this playlist because it will help you a ton.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And then last thing, we already beat this dead horse, but we were talking about RMs, like making sure like how much, I mean, outside of, because you can go through the regular algorithm, right? You can
you can apply online.
You can apply online, but how much of a difference does it truly make
Absolutely.
applying with RM as far as like the amount that you get funded for?
Yeah. So if you're applying online, let's say you have 800 credit score, thick, inquiries low, you might get 20K, 25K online. Now the difference when you apply with an RM is 75. And then maybe 30 days from that 75, we can go back and apply for another card at 25K. And now you're at 100K with just Chase.
Yeah.
All right. The reason for that is because these RMs have direct relationships with the underwriters.
Yeah.
And so they'll properly notate your account. They're literally handing your application over to a human that's going to review it, as opposed to you applying online with an algorithm and a computer that just spits out a random number and not a human.
Yeah, I mean, eventually we'll get there, but as for now, use this to your advantage.
Absolutely.
Use it to your advantage. And so when clients, when they sign up with us and they work with us, we obviously walk them through this entire process. And honestly, you can listen to this podcast, go through YouTube University, and you should be able to figure out a lot of the data points for the most part, and be able to get this done. But for us, we do a full walkthrough, like hand holding system, making sure our clients are good at every level, from their credit score, and help them with the credit repair if their profile is too thin, adding them on trade lines, making sure their LLC is up to date and looking good. If it's not, we make sure we make those appropriate changes, introducing them to our relationship manager so that we can consistently get the 75K approvals that you see in our videos and our channel. There's all the little social proof that we have. Even some, I mean, every
we'll post them up here. We'll show all the different approvals that we've gotten from the community and all that.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to our community tab, and we try to make sure we upload them onto our channel. So if you're interested in that and you need that, you're looking for funding for your business to secure, you're looking for a way to develop a capital system where you have access to 0% funding. And the beautiful thing about these cards is you can always roll them over to another card, make sure you don't pay interest, things like that. You can click the link below, go to wholesomefinancials.com and apply to work with us. And then we can make sure that we're a good fit and we help you work with that funding. But thanks for tuning in this video. We just wanted to make sure we covered everything you need as far as data points to make sure you got approved for high limit credit cards for 0% interest from banks like Chase that pull from Experian, because each bureau is a little different. And so in this series, we're going to be going through each major bank from each credit union, from each credit bureau, and talking about the data points that we walk our clients through to get them funded. And so I believe the next bank in our series would be Amex, right?
Amex, yeah, absolutely.
Or Amex. How you pronounce this thing? It's Amex, I think.
Potato, who knows?
I think it's Amex. Anyway, we appreciate you guys hanging out and tuning in with us. If you have any questions, leave them in the chat. If you had any different results, leave them in the description in the chat. We'd love to see that. Not leaving the chat, leave a comment. Used to live streaming and stuff. But outside of that, we love you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.